Welcome to the Adam Savage Project. I'm Adam.
I'm Norm.
And
I'm Dave Goelz.
Hi, Dave Goelz.
Hi. I'll take this off. I just wanted to make sure you guys were okay.
I appreciate your commitment. How are you, sir? How are you, my friend?
I am good. It's good to see you. Well, actually, I see you every night.
Oh, really?
I watch those one-day builds religiously, and I find that, you could call yourself an impatient builder, and I find that really helps me because I am a patient builder. Too patient. It takes forever.
Yeah.
Because every step is researched, everything is like timidly pursued, and you are motivating me to jump in and get things done, which I really appreciate.
Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, I'm going to just jump in and start talking about this because you brought up this really interesting point. Do you find sometimes that doing too much research stops you in your tracks and hinders your momentum?
It probably does. It probably does. And for the last 20 years, we were raising kids. So that creates little tiny envelopes of time to do things in.
Yes.
So like I spent 3 years building my daughter's dollhouse, mostly painting one shingle at a time and doing all the detail work before assembly. And then I thought, God, she's 9 years old. I've got to get this thing done. So Debbie took the kids to Hawaii, and I just slammed for a week and got that thing done. And but my natural tendency is to be super methodical. And I'm a craftsman, and I like things to be as perfect as I can get them.
Right. So what kind of have you been going down any research rabbit holes for projects during the lockdown?
Well, one of my lockdown projects is to make 2 dog beds that are window height so that our dog can see out while he's relaxing, because he likes to survey his lands. We have like 20 acres here, and it's very interesting out there for him. Yeah. So these had to be elevated dog beds, and we have a craftsman house with nice stickly and custom craftsman furniture, and I didn't want to just make something out of fur, so I thought I'll do a green and green style dog bed, 2 of them. And those would be on legs with steps. So they're basically, if you know Green and Green's architecture, the grand bungalows in Pasadena, they had their furniture made by the Hall brothers, and the furniture was designed by Green and Green, and they include Asian cloud lifts, these shallow little lifts and things on the edge. And so I designed this thing very carefully, and I'm about to make it. But I have my grandfather's tools here. I have my grandfather and my father's and my tools. It's a compendium, the drill press, and so forth, all those things. But I had my dad's router that I had always been afraid to touch. I just didn't understand routers. It seemed like too much trouble. You had to always make a jig, and I never touched it. So this time I bought a new router, and I've slowly been getting ready. Slowly. And I've had a little bit of tear out, a little bit of grabs, and so I haven't started working on the actual project yet. But once I get myself confident and up to speed, I will.
It's funny that you say my delineation of myself as an impatient builder inspires you, because in the last 6 weeks, I've actually sunk my teeth into a couple of gigantic, really deep builds. And I've found that, the first one, and I've said this on the podcast before, the first one was the Samaritan, the Hellboy sidearm that we put up the first video last week. And after Grant Imahara passed, I needed something long. I needed to sink my teeth into something that took my mind for a while. And I discovered that getting rid of that impatience was all about setting my expectations at the beginning of every day. Like, what am I going to get done today? And being really realistic about how much precision I was going to go for. And also, as I was getting close to the end of the day, like 3 or 4 o'clock, I'm like, sometimes I'll get into this fever pitch at about 4 o'clock where I'm trying to get everything done before going home for dinner. And I really worked to sort of tamp that down and be like, I'll get to where I get to, and I'm going to leave here at 5:50, and that's all that's going to happen. And it's been a very different mindset for me to be that methodical.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I built a thing. It's actually over there. I can't show it to you because it is destined. It was originally built to go into a museum. It's in that it's covered.
Yeah.
It's a gift for a friend, but it would be revealed in a museum. And some things happened and I couldn't do it. we couldn't get it into the museum. I don't know if we ever will, but it's still a secret. And it was about 2 years. It was probably 1,000 hours and lots of R&D. You know, I had to drill holes in certain kinds of plastics, so I kept buying drills to get the right one. You know the deal. So that just dragged on and on and on, literally for 2 years. If you ever come here again, if we can get you out here, I'll show it to you.
Well, have you found that the lockdown has changed your approach to making stuff? Has it given you a different perspective?
I don't know if it has. That's a good question. I haven't really been making a lot of stuff during this. I've actually had some work to do.
Yeah,
done some shooting at home, and I'm co-exec producing on the new Fraggle series. So I'm working on that. That takes a lot of time. Wow. And so I have little nippets where I can come out here and work in the shop. But I can't say that I've been really heavily involved in the shop.
Yeah. How has I found in the beginning of lockdown that it was very hard for me to find inspiration in anything. I just was taking in all of this. I was, reading all of this suffering and feeling lonely and wanting to see my friends. And I think the first month it was almost all shop infrastructure. That's all I could wrap my head around, was just making better shelves and making sorters for my tools, because there wasn't anything that I wanted to build for a while. Did you find anything like that in this time?
Well, I accepted the reality so quickly. Within 2 weeks of March 8th, when I locked down, I thought, well, this is just going to be 2 years. This is the new reality. Right. I mean, I'm older. I have asthma, so I'm vulnerable. Yeah. If I get it, I'll be gone in a week. So I figure this is the new reality. I'm just here. Thank God we have Zoom. We can see our friends. So it's okay. I've been completely at peace with it. I have no desire to see anybody except on the computer screen.
I have to tell you, we just got back from a trip for filming and spent some time in a totally COVID safe workplace. They have 140 employees and nobody's caught it. And it felt really almost intoxicating to work around people again, even socially distanced and everyone being masked. I still feel kind of a glow. I don't know about you, Norm.
Yeah. There's absolutely an energy to it. Just the sharing of a physical space, just not even necessarily having to communicate, but just being in the same room. Adam, when you were working and we were, messing with the camera stuff, there was that presence that we just couldn't replicate this way.
I know I'll feel it when I go back, for sure. I absolutely will feel it. Because I relish collaboration. I'm part of a group that collaborates, and now being involved with Sesame and with another great group. They're just incredible. It's great fun to be with them on Zoom, and it would be really fun to be in the same room, for sure. That'll be intoxicating.
How have you found doing your professional work on Zoom? Have you found it's more difficult or easier, or just a straight translation from doing it in person?
Well, in terms of shooting with puppets, it's already hard. Baseline is just flipping difficult. You're always in pain. You're always doing something unnatural. And so then
you've got to hold the phone up at the same time, right?
Well, I have the whole rig like you do. With lavalier mics and 2 iPhones going, etc. Wow. But I'm the whole crew as well as doing that hard job. Yeah. And Debbie helps me when we shoot video with puppets. We usually shoot on one iPhone, and then we record audio from a lavalier on the other iPhone, and then send both files in, and they put them together. So my wife does help me by rolling and stopping rolling, and that's a great help, because it would be impossible without that. I'm under the dining room table. How am I going to get up to the phone?
There'd be all these long takes of you crawling under the table, then crawling back out again.
Oh yeah. God, it was just it's really not fun to shoot at home, but on balance, it's better than getting on a plane. I mean, I've had so much travel over the years that I don't look forward to it ever. I mean, I'm happy wherever I land. I have friends and we do things. But I really would prefer they come here. And so that's one part of the lockdown that I love. No packing. Yeah. No packing the suitcase.
What is in your suitcase? What is
Yeah,
your
yeah.
performance like go bag require?
Oh, there's nothing required unless we're on stage, and then it's blacks. We just have,
Mhm.
black shirts and pants and shoes and socks. Otherwise, it doesn't require anything. Uh,
The puppets are brought by the company.
yeah,
Is that-
yeah.
yeah.
But like going back to when we were working in England and Toronto and New York at the same time, sometimes I would pack for 2 years, and I would have to be like 3 seasons in 2 countries, right? So you're thinking, okay, fall in London, rain, cold, and but summer in New York, that's hot and humid. So you got all this stuff you got to take.
That's way harder than any pack. I don't think I've gone. I mean, I have traveled for the last 10 years about 100,000+ miles a year, but everything is for a week or 2 weeks tops, never longer than that. Your style sounds way more difficult.
Well, also you have your costume is very simple. It's the black glasses and the T-shirt. Right? It's just easy.
like Albert Einstein, it's 6 pairs of jeans, 6 black T-shirts.
Yeah, and we might have to have dinner with the Queen,
Right.
So we never know what's going to happen to us during all those long trips.
Are your amazing kids in lockdown with you, or are they at different parts of the country?
They both live in Brooklyn separately.
Okay.
Ben lives with his girlfriend, and Amy lives with 2 roommates. They're all great people, really great people. So they're prudent and careful, and I feel great about that. Ben is a cinematographer, and he's really good, and he can't really get a lot of work right now. He's starting to open up a little bit, but Amy, and meanwhile, has been perfecting the film that you appeared in.
I was going to ask.
For the audience, it was Amy's senior thesis film in film school, and Adam was gracious. I mean, really gracious enough to appear in it, and he's incredibly good. I can't say too much about the plot, but it is germane to what's going on right now. And it turns out that she had she had Adam, and she had another actor who is a major actor, well known to everybody. And then she had a lesser known actress, and then a couple of people, like 3 people who weren't even actors, but they were all great. I mean, it just worked out so beautifully.
The rough cut I saw a few months ago was freaking delightful. And
it's 5 minutes shorter than that was, and it's tightened up. And Mick Giacchino is doing the score. That's Michael Giacchino.
Oh, nice!
And what else is going on? Ben is going to color it. Like right now, everything we've seen so far is in raw footage, and so it's really bland and pale. But there's a whole color design to this project that Amy worked out, and so once Ben colors it, it'll be superb. So she's going to go into film festivals with it. And I couldn't be more excited. I just keep saying, hurry, be like Adam, watch how fast he works.
When I got to hang out with you and Amy extensively in London at Giacchino's 50th birthday celebration, which was almost like a destination wedding, because we're all staying in the same hotel.
It was amazing.
It was. But there was a thing I saw in Amy that I really, really enjoyed on that trip. Was we were hanging out, because we hung out every night until like 1 or 2 in the hotel bar. Yeah. And everyone got a little in their cups. And at one point, I saw in Amy the performer's daughter, who's totally like grew up in performance and just a willingness to roll up her sleeves and jump into an improv. And she was just taking on characters and being provocative and really funny. It was so delightful to see that lineage carrying through.
It's really funny because she has been like that since she was a kid. She just was born that way. Yeah. And she's very clever. Like when Frank Oz came to dinner once when she was about maybe 5. And when he was leaving, he said, "Kid's got comedy chops."
That is a huge encomium from Frank.
I know, she's so funny. And what's amazing, like she went to film school and she liked cinematography. She loves composition. She's also a painter and a wonderful photographer. I mean, remarkable, uncannily good photographer. And when she couldn't choose a major because cinematography was too technical. She didn't like that. Mm-hmm. And everybody in film school says, "Well, I want to direct." And she never quite said that. But then when I saw her make this film, because I went along and kind of helped out getting donuts, she is a good director.
Yeah.
She just
Yeah, I agree. She was terrific with me. She's got those chops. I have to tell you, knowing directors as I have over the years, many big directors, the more I know them, the less I have any interest in directing.
Oh, it's so hard.
It sounds like the worst job.
I mean, even for a multitasker like you.
Frankly, from the inside baseball I've heard, it also sounds like the highest level and most difficult level of babysitting imaginable sometimes.
Yeah, it's 1,000 questions a day, I think.
Right. There's a great show. There's a great movie from years ago called Showrunner. I think it was a Netflix film.
Oh, I didn't
Interviews
see it.
with all these different showrunners about how difficult it is to do that for a show. And Bill Prady's interviewed in it. And at one point, Joss Whedon says, with this sort of evil smile on his face, he's like, they're all coming at you and they only have questions.
Yeah, that's it.
Just diabolical. But Amy really does have that kind of that presence of mind and that weird sort of inner peace that directors do of like, no matter all the noise and the pomp and circumstance, they know the goal of the shot.
Yeah, and they have to have that vision. I mean, as a performer, you can afford to go in and just think, what am I going to do with my characters? How will I be within this? Mm-hmm. And even just now producing the Fraggle series, we're working with writers every week. We have 4 sets of notes for every script. And I find that it forces me to think in the larger sense about the whole, more about the whole. And I really am enjoying that. And of course, it's a great group to work with. I mean, it's so much fun.
Right. So, the Muppets seem to me to be just this extended lineage of really egalitarian collaboration is the picture I have in my head.
It's true, certainly with the performers and people within our company, the workshop, the performers, our producers. It's a dance and everybody knows it. And everybody knows right from the time we worked with Jim that everyone has something to contribute and you work in service of the best idea. And there's not really much arguing about what's the best idea. Somebody,
right.
I'm in love with my thing. And then somebody comes along with something better. What am I going to do?
Right.
I have to go with it.
Totally egos about it.
Oh, I love, Jamie and I used to say, when the right idea shows up in the room, everybody knows.
Yeah.
And if you're going to resist that, you're an asshole because it's not about you.
It's really true. It's so true.
I can't tell you how many times Jamie and I have argued for days over something. And then someone else goes, why not just use masking tape? And we both look at that person and we both, like that Bugs Bunny thing where we turn into donkeys for a second because we're jackasses. And then we're like, yeah, that's how we should do it.
Yeah, we had one guy at Muppets. When I first joined, I worked in the workshop designing and building and puppets. And Don Saline was kind of like the senior designer there. And he was really... he was, God, I can't even think of words to describe him, but he was so talented and he always believed that he wanted to be doing what he wasn't supposed to be doing. Like if he was supposed to be building Dr. Teeth, he was making another character with a shit-eating grin, just as on the side because he was fascinated with this thing that he was trying. Yeah. And what I noticed about him was that when he gossiped about somebody, he always talked about what he loved about them.
Oh.
He'd say, oh, I love the way Maury draws. I love John Lovelady's attitude to life. And I remember thinking, this is different. I've never seen this before. The person's not here and you're saying something good about them.
Yeah.
The other thing is attribution of ideas. Like if somehow an idea comes up, 5 people are talking and an idea comes up, we always make sure when Jim came in, we always made sure to tell him who thought of the idea. Like even if the person wasn't there.
Wow.
Like Carolee had a great idea. And that ethos, I think, probably came from Jim originally. And that's just something that makes work so much nicer.
Indeed. I mean, that's the most powerful ethos because tell me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine after the decades of your career, you've seen no end to good results from, again, that egalitarianism of sharing the credit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the worst thing that we know we're in trouble if a new director comes in and says, relax, I've worked with puppets before. We're in trouble because this guy's he's just going to go plowing through and not look for help. The best directors that I've ever worked with, and one was the leading director of television dramas in Canada who loved comedy, came into Fraggle Rock, and he said, "I don't know if I can do this." And the other two best directors in Canada said the same thing. "Will you help me? How do I get this to work?"
And I mean, that's sort of, I'm always trying to have that approach to any project. I'm not sure how this is going to go. I don't know what's going to, I was playing a card game with some friends last night, and I got dealt this amazing hand, and the hand was so amazing. I literally started counting my money.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you are about to get so boned. You are not in the moment. You are not thinking strategically. You're thinking about, so like the director that comes in and says the director commands their troops and keeps everything running. It's not about that. It's a creative endeavor, and you've all got to figure it out together.
Yeah, we're going to miss a lot of good stuff if we work that way.
I'm curious how you find the performing of the puppet in the vacuum of the house as opposed to in a collaboration with other puppeteers. Is it very different or just more of the same?
It's not that different for us because, we work in a studio environment usually, or even if we're out on location, it still has to be quiet when we're working, right, even if there's traffic going by. So it's not like we're used to having an audience. Nobody can laugh. So
right.
Working at home is the same in that regard. It's just that I have to do the whole crew. I have to think, where am I going to put the lights?
No, so in the very beginning of lockdown, Norm set up one of Tested's cameras for me to use with a microphone on it. And I looked at it and I was just like, no, I'm just going to have to use this.
And we've leaned into it, right? And people,
You're really technical though, aren't you, Norm?
Yeah, I mean, we enjoy all aspects of it. I mean, that's the thing where I don't think any of us started thinking we'd be doing this, but then as we've been working together these years, like it's the thing that we relish, that part of the collaboration. And it was so fun, like this past week being, with Adam and with Joey and filming again, because we could have those conversations that otherwise we're kind of in our own heads thinking about ourselves. And it's a different product that comes out of it, and people love Adam, you shooting by yourself, and but I think it's gonna be a balance of that going forward. We're learning things about our own processes that we didn't know that we lead into. And
the editors, as they're cutting the footage, are trying different things and like asking me to do different things. Joey was the first one to tell me that when I hold the camera like this and point at stuff, it's really funny. So I was doing that just for his. I was like, here, I'm going to do a cut in like this, and he's like, he used the finger take because it was hilarious.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something really endearing too. I must say I watch more of the shop stuff than I do of the technical discussions or game. I'm not interested in gaming, so a lot of the stuff I don't see. But what I love are the one-day builds, and what I also love, that I think is a gift to your audience, is that you are willing to make mistakes, and you just say that's part of the process.
It's not easy, man. I will tell you. It's so funny. People are like, are you making a lot more mistakes in COVID? And I'm like, no. I usually turn to Gunther or Joey and say, I think you should turn the camera off right now. And then I realized I have no energy to go edit out my mistakes on the phone. I'm uploading all the footage and they can do whatever they want with it. And it ended up becoming part of the editing style to make fun of that and to use it because it's narratively meaty. It is, and it's a really important thing.
It's empowering for your audience because they know what you can build, and if they see mistakes, they understand. Oh, we'll all make mistakes, and that's part of the process, and we'll get there.
It's honestly what happened.
When I went to Art Center, I had a friend named Klaus Huckenbeck who was from Germany, and he said. Craftsmanship is an attitude. And I thought, that's spot on. That's a gift. Because it is an attitude. It's like, I built my Fisher Body car when I was in college. I won the Fisher Body Craftsman's Guild. And, I just knew that I had to do everything 3 times.
Yes. So years ago, we were doing a story on Mythbusters about walking on hot coals.
Yes, I remember that.
Okay, so I was the control, and I read nothing about hot coal walking. I'd let Carrie and Tori and Grant set up a hot coal thing, and then I walked on it, and I burned the crap out of my feet. I got 1st and 2nd degree burns on my feet. It took me a couple of days to heal up until I could wear shoes again.
Oh, my God.
And when you have those kind of burns, ice water is like an off switch to the pain. It's literally amazing.
Yeah.
And so I started to think about research that I had done on pain for Mythbusters previously, where people had said, you can dissociate from the pain. It takes a lot of energy, but you can do it. You can sit there and kind of let it take you over, or you can be a master of it. And so I would try that. I'd pull my feet out of the ice water and it would get hurt. And I would feel okay and get myself to that mental state where I was not letting it affect me emotionally and sort of, but it was a lot of energy, that attention. And
yes,
the better I get at the problem solving that I set out to do for the projects that I do, the more I see that the attention, that craftsmanship mentality, is that same kind of rigor and attention on both the project and where it's going and where you want to take it. It's exhausting, but really really invigorating.
Absolutely. It is just a state of mind. You simply have to do what's necessary.
One of the things I love that you said about working with Jim back in the days was that he would just keep on shooting until it was right.
Yeah, absolutely.
What an incredible luxury to do with the power that you have, just to keep on making things better, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it was instilled in us because that was my whole entire show business experience. I just started that way from the beginning because I was there with him. We had a lovely moment once when we were shooting a special. It was supposed to take 2 weeks, and it took 3 weeks. And on the last day, our producer came to me and said, "Well, we'd like to extend your agreement." And I said, "You know what? Let's just not extend it. Let's just say I'm so grateful to Jim. You tell him, because I didn't want to tell him directly. You tell him that I am nothing but grateful for all our time together, and I love him, and I consider this a Christmas card from me." And she told him, and when he left the studio, he had to go to London. We were in Toronto, and he said he came over and said, "Oh, thanks for that other thing." It was lovely. It was a sweet thing, Hey, I wanted to ask you about the design process. Like, I'm just curious. I have my own design process and my own philosophy about it, but I'm wondering what yours is.
It always begins with what feels like an impossibly messy room, the inside of my brain.
Okay, yeah.
Full of all these objects, and I have no idea which ones are important and which ones are unimportant. And I look at that messy room of the loose amalgamation of plans in my brain, and I think I don't have any idea how to approach all of this, which is the same feeling I have looking at a messy shop.
Yeah.
And then in the shop, I pick something up and I put it on a shelf, and then I do that again. And somewhere after about an hour or two, something real has happened.
Uh-huh.
And the same thing happens in my brain. I have learned with things. So I'm about to work on a rig for modifying part of the Samaritan pistol that I'm building, and it's a very complicated rig. And for a few weeks, I've sort of not been able to wrap my head around it. But this morning, I started to diagram it out, and I thought, okay, what am I having trouble with? Oh, it's this part. And so I just kept on drawing parts of that part. And then something made sense. Like the part went into my head, and now I had a point of view on the business end of this thing.
Uh-huh.
And that was the hard part. And so then I start designing back from the most difficult part. And all that rest of that design starts falling into place, because until I knew how this thing worked, none of the other stuff could be filled in. So I always look for that first point of view. That first step where, okay, I don't know anything, but wait a minute, I do know this one thing to move one increment forward. And when I move that one increment forward, it's like I'm a little bit higher, and I look around and oh, there's another thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a similar, I guess it's a similar process, but it's formalized for me because my dad taught me how to make things. And when I was little, he was a mechanical engineer, and we were car guys, so I made little model cars, and then I got more elaborate and started modifying them and customizing them. But I remember being maybe 9 years old and almost having a tantrum, just thinking, I can't get Revell kits in particular, too many pieces, too hard to get together. Totally. And he would always come over and say, well, let's see, what's the problem? And that's my design process, is defining the problem.
Yes.
And I find that the more I define it, the more solutions fall away, and the real best ones emerge. Almost to the extent that by the time you get done, you've got something that is the only answer.
Right.
You know
But
what I mean?
it might not be to the answer. You might not have been asking the same question in the beginning of the process too. That like, on Mythbusters, we would frequently find that we'd shoot half of an episode and realized we were trying to answer the wrong question.
Yeah.
And we'd make that part of the narrative and pivot and go back to the right question with all this extra institutional knowledge of how we'd screwed up.
Yeah.
And once you have the right question, it's like this big handle, and you could start to beat down all sorts of stuff with it.
Yeah, it's remarkable, and I actually have I have a lot of show and tell here, but
show and tell.
My industrial design career when I was at HP, we worked on laser interferometers, which measure changes in distance down to a millionth of an inch, and so you could literally put it on a milling machine and use it to measure. And one of the tools that went with the laser was a mirror shooting straight back into it so you could measure the change in distance. And the other one was a mirror that would bend the light at any angle. It could be, it usually was 45, but essentially you needed something that would hold a round front surface mirror and either go straight back into the laser or up from the laser or at a different angle anyway.
Yeah.
And so this sort of suggests like a prism shape, like a wedge shape.
Sure.
But the further I got into it, the more I thought, well, but you also need to clamp it down. So you need surfaces to clamp to the milling machine. And as I got into it, I thought, wow, this is really interesting, because what if I have just this mirror and only the surfaces I need to use it, and everything else is gone?
Ooh.
So it doesn't look like a big wedge anymore. It looks like this.
Wow.
And this is cast iron because it's dimensionally stable. It is a front surface mirror. But all the wedge is gone. And this way you have holes in the base. You have one here, here, and one on the other corner. You have indexing surfaces. So it's sand cast from cast iron, but with precisely milled surfaces that you can index to. So you can run a surface gauge on your mill and set it exactly at right angles and so forth, or right angles this way.
Oh, wow. All three axes of right angles. Look at that.
You clamp it down here, or you clamp it down here, and you can turn. So anyway, it does all that stuff. And there's nothing here that you don't need. It's all been carved away.
Right.
So this is probably the thing I'm most proud of in designing. And it does follow that whole philosophy of like, what's the problem here? What do we need?
And it's great to ask that question and not let yourself be restricted by what has been done before, because the wedge shape is sort of like the first pass that almost anyone would do.
Yeah.
And you went and asked it as an upside down question, not what do I need the shape to be like, but what don't I need the shape to be like? I don't need all this extra filler stuff.
Yeah, because the first thing would have been like a 22-pound block of steel with little ears sticking out to clamp it, and it would be big. It would be hard to get into smaller spaces and so forth. But another thing I want to say, I love your book, and I loved especially your drawings, because of course, as an industrial designer, I do drawings too.
Yeah.
And when I finish something at home, I've been doing this for my kids. Like after I'm gone, they will find this clipboard on the wall.
Wow.
And this has plans for a lot of things that they will remember. Like here's one, we just had a standby generator installed. And so this is the elevation for how we were going to put a pad down and excavate earth and install it. But there's all this stuff. I made a Christmas ornament to auction off for the Disney Museum a couple of years ago, and these were paint tests, right, for the ornament, early paint tests, and on. It goes way back to when my son was little and he had a bunk bed, and he needed a shelf up there so that he could put his books or whatever he wanted onto the shelf. So that drawing is in there too. So someday they'll find this thing and they'll be able to riffle through and see all the things they remember from their childhood.
And you assemble some of those drawings after the build. I'm curious I love chronicling stuff, but I'm curious why you started and what you get out of it.
I think I'm not totally sure. Like one day when Ben was in kindergarten, I was putting him to bed at night, and I said, "What do you want to do tomorrow?" He said, "I'd like to build a boat and take it to school and share it." I said, "Okay, we're going to get up an hour early. We're going to go to the shop." He's 5 years old. You design it, make me a drawing, and I will build it, and then we'll take it to school and share it right then. And we did. And so I have that little drawing in there. I have the bunk bed drawing. And these could be anything, just whatever sketches I used to make it. They might have been nice drafting, or they might have been just sloppy sketches. But it's just a habit I've gotten into, that when I get done building something, I just clip the sketch into this clipboard that my dad used to have.
Well, I mean, I love going through my sketchbooks and looking at old projects. And frankly, whenever there's a part that I didn't write down in the sketchbook, I feel like it's missing. Right? Like, it is each sketch is a snapshot of all the problem solving I was doing, even where I wrote stuff, like tells you where I was in the shop, or there's grease stains or blood. I mean, there's blood on plenty of the pages in my sketchbook, as I'm sure there are on your drawings.
There's some blood. Yeah, it's you. Of course, you're 1,000 times the archivist than I am. I mean, I saw your loft tour. So that actually gave me sickness. I started to feel queasy. I thought, I'll never be an Adam Savage ever. You are a crazy man.
It's true, and you have no idea how much I've gotten rid of. Like, that loft a year ago probably had 4 times the amount of stuff in it.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Dave, when you're not performing, do you think of yourself, your default state as fabrication, as being a craftsperson? So many people just know you as the performer.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. I mean, I like to have people. I love having people over for dinner. I like to get 6 or 8 people around the table and have great conversations.
You throw an amazing dinner party, Dave. I've had some fabulous conversations at your dinner.
It's one of the most fun things I do. Of course, I love to cook, so I try to make it taste good. That's
Dave is a master pizza maker, everybody.
It's even better now than when you were there. I found the secret to crust. But yeah, I mean, that's part of the art of life, Norm. I'm sure that you guys have lives. Well, you can see how wide-ranging both your lives are through these podcasts. But what are they? Podcasts, vodcasts?
Give or take.
Video.
Whatever they are.
Yeah, there you go.
But we can kind of see into your life and know that you guys would be really interesting to know, because there's range. There's a lot of range. And that's what I love in my friends. I like to get people around the table who have, all different perspectives and different sets of knowledge, So I have all this share stuff. I don't know whether to just like bring things up or.
Yeah, break something out. Let's see. What have you got? Well, I love seeing what you've been thinking about, or what you've got from the past.
All right. An early thing was, I had a little kid. As a kid, I had Dinky Toys and Tootsie Toys. They were little model cars that were about this big.
Yeah.
And the Tootsie Toys were cheaper. The Dinky Toys were more expensive. Die-cut English toys, and they were all great. So my dad gave me a Tootsie Toy, but he took it to work. This is the Buick Y-Job. It's a very famous dream car from General Motors. It was designed by Harley Earl. It was never produced. It was simply what they called at that time a dream car. But my dad took it and he added a full suspension underneath. It's a spring steel suspension. No belt with rivets.
Wow.
He turned the wheels, and then he used O-rings for the tires. So it has suspension. It also has steering. So you can turn this little tiller up here. Let's get the shot working. And that is his steering linkage that he built.
Wow.
So by the time I was 5 years old, I could parallel park. Right? I knew how to drive because I was really learning with these things.
Wow.
That was one thing. He made tons of things. He also built me a half-scale Thunderbird when I was a kid. And it never got quite finished, unfortunately, but because I grew out of it before it could get finished. But it was a fiberglass body and a chassis that we used to take to the Rose Bowl on Sundays, because there was a cop there who would clock you, and it would go 45 miles an hour. And he was a great designer and builder, and so he taught me all this stuff. This is something he made in his retirement. He thought, I need one of those the fancy drill press jig for my lightweight model airplane building. And I think I'll make one. So he built this entire thing out of wood.
Wow.
It's all hardwood. It's all waxed so that it works beautifully.
Oh my
It's
God.
tight right now, but it goes up at an angle. It's a drill press vise. But that's this guy who taught me how to figure out what the problem was.
That example that your dad gave you, my dad did the same thing. I got to watch him make stuff to make the house better. He rebuilt the deck up behind our house 3 times. It took 3 tries to get it mostly right.
Uh-huh.
But witnessing someone going through that process is such a formative thing for a kid to
really
see.
Is. Isn't it? I mean, it's a great gift. It's a huge gift. And the further I go in life, the more I remember that and the more grateful I am for it. It was just a lucky thing.
I mean, I think there's also, sorry, go ahead, Norm.
Go ahead.
Oh, Dave, I was going to say, there's also this aspect of like, being able to hold the thing in your head, which takes practice.
Oh, yeah.
To put something in your head so that you really feel like you understand the thing. And that watching someone go through that process gives you the courage to take on something and like, oh, let me see if I can do the same thing. It's my dad built one year for Christmas. I think I was like 6 years old. He said, what do you want for Christmas? I said, I want a race car for my teddy bear Gus. And he built a race car that out of fiberglass. This is like 1972.
Uh-huh.
So he's using polyester fiberglass, which is just horrendous.
Yeah.
And he made this race car that I could sit in. And I still remember being astounded, like, wait a minute, I thought of something and then somebody did some things and now the thing I thought of is in front of me.
I'm glad you said that, because something that didn't exist before that now exists is a powerful phenomenon. And I remember when I used to build model cars, I don't have any of them handy here, but I built these 1/25th scale models, and I would take 3 months on a model, and it was unrecognizable by the time I was finished. And I remember thinking, I love the fact that this didn't exist before. I used something to make it that you can no longer recognize, and this is a new thing. And oh my God, the excitement of that is just beyond.
Well, what we've stumbled on in this conversation is the broadest definition I have ever come up with for making, because I've been confronted with countless people, coders, even puppeteers, piano players, etc., who say, I'm not a maker, I blank. And I always tell them, making is any time that you use your point of view to make something that didn't exist.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. I mean, this process that I talk about of defining the problem, I use for everything. I use it for performing. Yeah. I use it for relationships, friendship. It's a universal tool. It's like the Leatherman of your brain.
Yeah. It is a really lovely practice. And it also is like in the middle of the noise and bother of production, because there's few things more distracting than making films or television.
Yeah.
It like gives you that peaceful anchor in the middle, doesn't it?
Oh, I'll tell you, there were periods while we were raising our kids that were really stressful, not because of the kids, but just because of all the things that were going on in life. And anytime that I came out to my shop to start working, I found that it just focused me and calmed me down, and the rest of this stuff fell away. I mean, you guys must feel the same thing.
That's the workbenches. It's where I can pretend that I have some control over anything.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. I'm looking at my share pile. We won't get to it all, but when I grew up, I gravitated toward I always wanted to be a performer when I was a kid. I loved puppets. I did sketches in high school, comedy sketches, and we did a Beatles number a couple times for talent show. But underneath it all, I thought, I'll have to be an engineer, but it's too boring. It's too dry. Not boring, but just dry. I want it to be more fun. So I started heading for industrial design. So even when I was in Silicon Valley, I found myself going to a ceramic shop where I lived in Los Gatos and buying stuff like this. And, this little guy was my teacup. This was sold by a guy who made what he called air fern freakheads. They were like planters that you could grow ferns in. Some of them were big. These were just cups. But this crude little thing was a character. And I just thought, oh, this is my buddy. I'm drinking tea out of him. I had another one. This is the other one.
Oh, it's adorable.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah, and so here I was, not knowing it. And this, I guess, the message for people who are watching would be, give yourself room to indulge yourself. Whatever your proclivities are, give them a chance to get out and air themselves. Because I didn't know that 5 years from that moment when I bought that teacup, I would be on the world's most popular television program. You know?
Well, the two things strike me there. There's a line from Steve Martin's autobiography, Born Standing Up, when someone says to him at the beginning of his career, "You will eventually use everything you have ever learned."
Yeah.
It's really true. It all ends up being part of that. And then this last week, one of the folks we were working with brought his intern over to me, and he said, "Do you have any advice for her? She's just starting out in her career." And I said, "My only advice is you have more time than you think. When you're 22 and fresh out of college, or supposed to go out and start your life, you feel like you got to make all these decisions. And in my experience, and I think in your experience, everything's going to shift. 5 years from now, your life will be unrecognizable from what it is. And you should just prepare yourself for the ride."
Yeah. Watch for the turns. Try not to miss a turn.
I think that is a perfect place to wrap up this delightful and really lovely conversation. Dave, it's my favorite conversation, talking about creativity and inspiration.
Oh, me too. I love it. I love you guys. I love what you do. Thank you for being there. You're getting a lot of people through COVID.
Oh, well, when we are seeing humans again in person, please come to the cave and build something with me.
Yeah, that sounds
Let's
good.
make something together.
That sounds good. Okay.
Excellent.
No,
all right, my friend.
It's a joy. It's a joy knowing you. And gosh, I'm glad to know you now, Norm. This is wonderful.
Same to you, man.
All right, guys.
Stay safe, okay, Dave, and give Debbie and everybody my love.
You too. Be careful. Wear your mask and vote.
Will do, sir.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Bye-bye.